Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this presentation. And first of all, we hope that you are all keeping well. On behalf of our housing management team, can we extend our sincere thanks for taking time out of your day to view your Tenant conference presentation. We adopted this approach last year as part of a review of the way we were having to work during the pandemic. And as a result of the positive feedback we received, we made the decision to do this again this year. Let's now move on to an outline of what this presentation will cover. As you will see from the outline on screen for today, we would like to start by letting you see some of the many great achievements in the last 12 months. None of these could have been achieved without working with you, our tenants. We will then look at some of the challenges which lie ahead for us all in 2022, 23 and beyond. Next, we'll look at how our current rents compare nationally and locally, how affordable they are, particularly relevant in relation to the additional financial pressures being placed on many households. We will then briefly cover how your rent money is spent before moving on to look at how we make sure you're involved in the rent setting process, finishing up with an overview of what happens next. So here's the video now.
It's been another busy year for your housing services. As COVID restrictions eased, we have been able to get back to providing you with all the services you'd expect from us. Here are some examples of the high quality work we have done over the last 12 months for our tenants. Providing new homes for our tenants. Our programme building new council homes for affordable social rent continued. We completed a major development of 65 new affordable council homes at the site of the former Glebe School in Scone. Another development of 70 brand new council homes for affordable rent was also completed at Hunting Tower in Perth. This was the largest development of new council homes since Perth and Kinross Council restarted its house building project in 2012. A new development of affordable council homes was completed in Perth City Centre. The 4-storey block at 6 Milne Street is made up of 8 new flats, including accommodation specifically designed for wheelchair users and people with specific needs. In Meagle, 12 new council homes were delivered in Ardlow Road, all fitted with solar panels to help drive down the energy bills of our tenants. Perth and Kinross Council's innovative scheme to buy back former council homes for affordable rent beat its target for the year 2021-22. The buyback scheme helped to supply additional council accommodation of the type and size that people need in the areas they want to live. For the year 2021-22, we completed 32 buyback purchases against our target of 30. This will bring the total number of buybacks completed to 259 since the scheme was introduced in 2012. Tackling homelessness. Last year's publication of the Scottish Government's latest homelessness statistics for 2020-21 showed that Perth and Kinross is the best performing council by some distance thanks to our Home First approach. The report said there was a further 12% reduction in homeless presentations in 2020-21, following a 19% reduction the previous year. Once again, we had the lowest use of temporary accommodation use in Scotland. Locally, there was a 25% reduction in the number of live homeless cases in the context of a 10% increase nationally. Repairs and improvements. Our repair service has made good progress working through a backlog of non-emergency repairs that built up during lockdown. Thank you for the continued patience as we tackle this work. We carried out upgrades to smoke and heat alarms to make sure your homes comply with new national legislations, making our tenants safer. We are also in the process of carrying out electrical checks on all our homes to ensure wiring and electrical systems are up to the national standard. A new strategy that will totally transform our multi-storey blocks at Potterhill, Pomerium, Market Milne and Lickley Courts has been launched. Our Neighbourhood Improvements Programme estate-based initiatives delivered 57 projects in partnership with tenants and residents. This included building a new soundproof fence, clearing overgrown trees and bushes, creating social outdoor seating, better fencing, more car parking, new hubs to store bins, and new signs so that properties can be found easily. Rent setting. We carried out annual consultations on rent levels for 2022-23 with tenants. A record 2,177 tenants responded to the consultation, which is almost 30% of all our tenants. This was the biggest ever response to our annual rent survey, and compares to 1,282 responses last year. Tenants voted for a 3% rent increase, which was agreed by councillors earlier this year. Supporting tenants. As the cost of living has increased, we have continued efforts to support tenants who are struggling with their rent and bills. We have paid out over £200,000 to tenants who are in a bit of financial difficulty and needed help to keep their tenancy. Our 4 local housing teams have been given Think Yes budgets so they can react quickly to help tenants who are in need of support to keep their tenancy. Locality housing teams work with new tenants to ensure that 90.65% of the tenancies were sustained for more than 1 year, against a national average of 90.2%. We saw a decrease in the number of complaints made about serious antisocial behaviour. We dealt with 100% of the 15 serious ASB complaints we received within our 2-day target. Our financial inclusion project was launched. This sees our staff telephone tenants to see how you are coping and if there's anything we can do to help. We launched our new tenant wellbeing service to help people who are feeling a bit socially isolated. This service was pledged in last year's rent setting process and helps people to make new friends and link in with local services and organisations that can help them. We successfully held our summer and autumn tenant conferences online to keep everyone safe, but allow tenants to continue to have a voice in their housing services. We would like to thank our tenants for continuing to work closely with us to make all of this success possible.
I'm sure you will agree that we have achieved significant results together, despite the many challenges we have faced. But we know that along with these achievements, we can also expect challenges in the year ahead and beyond. I don't think any of you will not have heard of, or indeed might be experiencing to varying degrees, the impact of the cost of living increase. This could potentially have an impact on our tenants' ability to pay their rent, resulting in an increase in our arrears levels. It also stretches some already tight household budgets, and it's important that we as your landlord are able to help respond to this. Unfortunately, poverty exists throughout Perth and Kinross, and it's important that we play our role in mitigating the impact of this for tenants and provide the necessary support to you all to move out of poverty wherever possible. Climate change will be a significant challenge for us and achieving the ambitious targets which have been set in relation to our properties. The demand for accommodation continues, but one particular challenge is our ability to be able to provide housing in some rural areas in Perth and Kinross. As the next bullet point outlines, operationally, we have been having recruitment difficulties, and we are not alone in this, and this impacts on both us and you as tenants. As mentioned earlier, ambitious targets have been set by the Scottish Government in relation to energy performance. We all know prices are increasing, and the construction industry is no different, and this places additional pressures on our budgets when we're undertaking our routine day-to-day repairs, voids work and improvements projects. The housing revenue account is self-financing. We have no other source of funding from either the Scottish Government or from within Perth and Kinross Council. Positive to this is that means we're not affected by any Scottish Government reductions in funding. However, the negative side of that is we're self-financing, and we have to bear any costs or pressures from generating our HA income. 93% of the income to the HRA is from tenants' rent money, which equates to £32.8 million. Let's now have a look at how average rent levels in Perth and Kinross compare. As you will see from the slide, within Perth and Kinross, our average rent levels across our housing stock remain considerably lower than other local authorities, with our average rent levels remaining lower than the Scottish average, so we continue to fare well in this area. This table breaks this down by property size, with the second column showing you the local authority average and the third column showing how Perth and Kinross Council compares to this. As you can see, we range from 0% difference up to 11% lower, with the overall average rent being 6% lower or £4.22 per week. Ensuring our rents remain affordable for our tenants, current and future, continues to be a priority and an area of key consideration when setting our rents. It's important, though, that as well as looking at the national context, we look at the local context here in Perth and Kinross and how we compare against other social housing providers who operate in our area. The table above is similar to the table on the previous slide, but it compares our rents with housing associations who have stock in Perth and Kinross, which are a potential genuine housing alternative for tenants of Perth and Kinross Council. Again, we compare really well against this. In terms of percentage, we range from 12 to 22% lower, and overall, our average weekly rent is 18% lower, or £13.22 per week. Whilst both the local authority and social landlord comparisons are favourable for us, what is important is, despite this, is how affordable our rent levels in Perth and Kinross Council are for our tenants. This table outlines what percentage of a tenant's household income they are spending on their rent. The Housing Needs Demand Assessment says that a household should be paying no more than 25% of their income towards their housing costs. However, in reality, households are actually spending anything between 25 to 35%. Perth and Kinross Council were one of the first local authorities to introduce their affordability toolkit several years ago, and we've continued to adapt this to allow us to provide not only information like this, but also on a more detailed basis. The table above shows the percentage of income based on income levels in Perth and Kinross and compares this with the local authority and the RSL average. As you can see, our highest percentage of income being put towards housing costs is sitting at 25%, compared to others, the local authorities and social landlords, where these can range up to 30%. The second table shows you that in terms of income levels in Perth and Kinross, 84% of tenants can afford our rent levels without any housing assistance, so universal or housing benefit, compared to the other local housing providers who are sitting at 81%. Affordability will always be a key consideration for Perth and Kinross throughout the rent setting process. We mentioned earlier the level of rental income that helps support the services we deliver. We would like to move on and show you how this rent money is spent with a slide which probably will look very familiar to many of you who've been here before. This slide shows the breakdown of our housing revenue account expenditure and shows how much of every pound is broken down across the services. 31p in every pound is for neighbourhood services, covering the locality housing teams, for example housing officers and housing assistants, sheltered housing, our allocations housing options, and some aspects of housing support. Repairs and maintenance is 30p in every pound. This covers emergency repairs, day-to-day repairs, voids, adaptations and capital investment. Financing costs are 23p in every pound. These are our loan charges for past and future borrowing costs of the capital programme. The contribution, or CFCR, capital funded from current revenue, is funding that is in our revenue budget that is transferred to the capital budget to reduce the level of borrowing required to fund the capital programme. This amounts to 9p in every pound. Support services at 7p in every pound is our corporate recharge for services such as legal, human resources, finance, business improvement and tenant participation. So let's finally look at the overall rent setting consultation framework. Our approach to consultation and engagement was developed and agreed with Tenants and has been enhanced since it was originally introduced in 2014. The process begins in April, just at the point where the new rent levels agreed in the previous year have been introduced. We feel it is important that we start as early in the year to ensure that all tenants have an opportunity to participate and that there is sufficient time for us to ensure this takes place and that we hear your views. In June, we have our tenant conference, and this presentation leads into that. At the conference, we will provide you with feedback on the Rent Priorities Survey, along with other key areas of interest, and there's more information on this later. Using this feedback, we will develop a range of rent level options, and these will be presented to you at your autumn conference in October. Following this, all tenants will be given a rent voting survey and given an option to choose their preferred rent levels. So what happens next? Well, next, we will hold your summer conference on the 22nd of June. We are delighted to say there will be 2 attendance options. After 2 years, we are now in a position to have an in-person conference at the Salutation Hotel, Perth, and we look forward to seeing some of you again in person. However, you can also join the conference live online with support where needed. The conference, as I mentioned earlier, will include the results of the rent setting priorities survey, but will also include a question and answer session with the housing management team. This will then be followed by key speakers who will cover some of the key areas in relation to cost of living, fuel poverty and climate change, which I am sure will be of interest to you. If you have any questions in relation to this presentation, then please send them on to the address shown. Even if you're unable to attend the conference, these questions will be raised with Housing Management Team and responses will be provided. If you would like to join the conference online, then Kevin Heller's details are included and you should contact him directly. It just leaves me to say thank you so much for your time. This is an important consultation which will affect every tenant in Perth and Kinross, and we hope to see as many of you there at the salutation or online virtually as possible. Thank you once again.